Thanks for coming tonight. Merry Christmas to y'all. Got a nice sized group here. We're thinking about all of the people who contributed to Valley Express and the work that's been done. And I'm seeing Jonathan in the back here. Jonathan and his girlfriend, I can't remember her name, Mariah. These two, when we go get into the truck shop, these two, all of the cut grooves that are all the way through the truck stop all needed to be caulked. And these guys were in there every weekend caulking 26,000 square feet of floor. Thank you, guys. What I wanted to make sure to talk about again would be our youth pheasant hunt. I just want to remind you all that you're invited with a child or a grandchild to come out to our farm in western North Dakota to let them see what it's like to kind of get out into the country and do something besides play video games. And this year we had a really nice turnout for this hunt, and we had kids that have been coming back for the second year now, and they're very good hunters now. So every one of them shot pheasants, and we had two new Brittany puppies out there this year, and so I don't think their feet touched the ground for the whole weekend. Someone was carrying them around. So it was really a good time, and we have bunkhouses out there. They're heat and air conditioned, and we've got friends of mine that come in and cook meals, and it's just a really nice time. So think about that if you have someone that would be under 16 and they can come to this weekend, the weekend before pheasant opener. So that's the first thing I want to talk about. I also wanted to talk a little bit about Valley and its history, and I guess the reason to kind of talk about history here is this is our 40th year. And you know, talking to our banker, he kind of goes, you know, a lot of businesses, they don't make it to their 40th year. And then he says, and then they don't do so well. How are you guys doing? And so I figured we should look at the numbers a little bit and see how we're doing. I just wanted people to see these branches because they support our company so well. And if they would all operate like the ones we have, I'd take 100 more. We know the process, we know how it works, and every one of these contribute in such a responsible way. We're really grateful for our branches, so thank you to the ones that are here tonight. If you recall, not that long ago, I communicated about our numbers, and I was talking about that we might make it to $50 million in annual revenues. And it was shortly after that we never really did see 60 million because we raced right past it to 70 million. And so this is from 1979 on up to present. You can kind of see what Valley did. And you can also see the 2008 downturn and how we kind of rode that out and where we're at now. We talked about the $100 million mark, and I really don't know what we're going to get done, but if we were to stay on the same trajectory, we might see that in 5 to 7 years. I call it slow, steady growth, and it's treated us all real well, and we wouldn't have had all of these things happen if it weren't for all of you. And there's so many things that have to happen in order to get those numbers. As an example, the most recent milestone was with our safety department. With this kind of growth, you're putting trucks on, and you're growing. When you can grow, you need to grow. And so we threw trucks on pretty fast. And as you throw those trucks on your CSA score, you get benchmarked against bigger truck lines again, and then it's harder to score. And so we had a few alerts in the CSA we needed to get cleaned up. The goal is to get ourselves down to 2 alerts by the first of the year, and this just happened. We're down to 2 alerts So we went and got tequila and celebrated. So safety department, beautiful job. Beautiful. Another thing that amazes me is running $70 million through that accounting department. The amount of transactions that have to take place, the collections that take place, the settling of the trucks. We've got some people here that are settling 400 trucks a week right now in order to manage that flow. And you know, it's in today's age, you don't collect that 70 million unless you actually collect it. And that's being done beautifully as well. Thank you, accounting, for all you do. And lastly, our dispatchers, you know, Merle, Bob Franklin, I'm going to talk about the old days a little bit because it's our 40th year. I know what you do, and it seems like most of you that I see here all do it better than I ever did. You guys are really organized and are moving, as an example, 3,500 loads a month, and in this last year, 41,500 loads is what have been shipped through Valley Express. And then we have Valley Worldwide. Amy, I see you in the back. I see Sean. Thanks for coming from Minneapolis. And we got Wayne here that make up the Valley Worldwide, the international side of our business. And in the last year, they've moved over 7,000 shipments worldwide. Some were coming in from China or going out, and they're building momentum in worldwide. So thank you, you guys. How did we all get here, and where did we start? The third and final topic I want to talk about is Merle, because I think a lot of you, this place was the last place that you saw him. And I have to tell you, Paige picked out this picture, not me. And I'd like to pay tribute to his contribution of these 40 years. As you know, we lost him here last year. I'd like to talk about his impact. I've personally heard about a truck called Big Red, and I just heard it, but I never really asked questions about it because it was maybe more in passing. And that's Big Red right there, and that's kind of hard to make out. But based on what we were kind of doing the math backwards, I think he was definitely in his 20s, okay? And if I recall, while he was with that truck, he also had 2 other jobs, and Lori was going to school. Do I have that about right? Yeah. And what's significant about that truck is Wallworks Finance was financing it. Do I have that right? And he lost it. He couldn't make payments. Now, Merle, you know, in the later years, with a phone call, he could go to the same financial institution and order a fleet of trucks. And my point in bringing this up is we kind of reflected on his life. The word that came to mind to me is resolve or fortitude. He never failed. There was never a failure with him. It was just, everything was just another turn in the road. And so, at this point, I think one of the reasons that he might have lost that truck too is because he was hauling loads for a company called Return Loads. They had a dispatcher by the name of Bob Franklin, and Merle was doing his job, Bob was doing his, but Return Loads wasn't paying anybody. So rather than give it up, what Merle did, this is typical Merle, he hired Bob and got a hold of my dad. And the 3 of them decided to form a company, and they had to find a name for it. It was called Valley Express, and started moving their own freight. You can see here's some of the trucks that that he's had throughout the year. There were a lot of potatoes up and down the valley, and Merle's way of thinking was broker potatoes all winter long and take the summer off. Pretty good plan, huh? But pretty soon these trucks wanted freight year-round, and pretty soon these trucks needed a home. Pretty soon we had to figure out how to lease them on, and that was kind of spooky at that time. because I was involved with the business now kind of into this era, and to lease these trucks on means you're responsible for every dollar they make, and it was a big step. You know. Merle did eventually take summers off, but it wasn't by being absent from work. It was racing and family. You know, people talk about buzzwords like work-life balance, and I think Merle had it figured out. He knew work-life balance, and no one was going to change that for him. Stepping back just a little bit, Merle, Roger, and Bob opened an office. It was huge, multiple floors, elevators. Actually, it was a used trailer house that they bought, and they set it in the parking lot of TJ's Truck Stop out by that intersection if you're going to take 94 out and then cut across on, is that 338 to 336 to Highway 10. And that's they put that trailer house right at the end of the fuel islands, and you got to remember, no fax machines, no cell phones, no computers, and the drivers would fuel up, walk in, ask about loads, and Bob Franklin give them their papers, and away they go. If you can imagine, in that trailer house, there was only a few years that actually we were running out of room, and so then there was a major expansion. Not that expansion. Not that expansion. The major expansion, there was a double-wide trailer house. Then the used trailer house got sold. I remember, got some money back out of it, bought the double-wide, put it in, and now we were big time. And that's where I started with Valley Express then, and that was 36 years ago that I started there. And we had this room and a circle of desks. Everybody smoked. The room was blue. I smoked then, and set up kind of an exhaust system for it in the center of the desk that kind of pulled the smoke out best it could, but wasn't the best. But and we were moving freight. Now we were starting to get noticed by people that were in the industry. One of them was John Adams, that him and his wife built the City Limit Truck Plaza over on 32nd Avenue that's now the Flying J. And he approached and asked us if we'd come over and operate out of his building, because he knew the trucks we'd bring through his fuel islands. And he gave us a 10-year lease on that place for little or no money, just to get us there. And this is an old picture. And Bob Franklin, Merle, and myself, and we moved freight like that. We had a board up on the back, and we'd write on all of our loads. We'd write them up on the board, and by the end of the day, if they weren't moved, we were sitting there still trying to move them, and then scratch them off the board. So pretty high tech. And if you notice, I'm reaching through a Rolodex right there. And now in later years, I was over at NDSU with some students trying to develop a load matching system, which is working by email activity, and talking to the students about how we matched freight. I just was explaining to them that, well, all we had back then was a Rolodex of contacts, and we'd use those contacts to find those loads, and now with this technology we can automate. And I kind of looked up at him, and pretty soon I kind of had to ask, I said, do you guys know what a Rolodex is? Nope. I didn't know what it was. I got a kick out of that. What did you see?
I said Merle still has it on his desk.
It still has the Rolodex, yeah. And, you know, you think about Internet Truck Stop and the different things we have for finding freight. Maybe you might remember this. We were calling, when we'd send a truck somewhere where we didn't have freight, none of us in the room had contacts, we'd call the Chamber of Commerce of the city that we were going into, ask them what industries are in the area, get the phone number for the place that it is, call them, and ask them for a load. How's that for efficient? So I just remember Merle talking later years when Internet Truck Stop came in, you know, and he grumbled at most technology, and I just remember him saying, "This isn't good. It's all broker loads." Well, there's some truth to that, but it'd be kind of hard to operate without it now. As we were looking for old photos, which I wish we had more, we didn't have the double wide or the trailer house. We just haven't found them, you know. And we found a few things. One was a new card of Merle's that's 15 years old, and also his name with the address of the Flying J Truck Plaza, or City Limit Truck Plaza. And then we found his counter check, and I asked Paige to put it in the display because I got a feeling there's people here that don't know what a counter check is. And for those that don't know, back when they were around, every business had them sitting on their counter. And when you wanted to buy something, you just come in and you'd write your account number on the bottom, and you can see Merle, I guess Paige was telling me the first 3 had account numbers written on them, getting ready to be for the next thing you might buy. And you write the check off of their counter check, buy your thing or get your cash, and away you go. So a lot of changes between then and now on how you pay for things. So about 10 years later of being at the City Limit Truck Plaza, we ran out of room, bought a warehouse over at by Peterbilt in South Fargo, added an office to it, and I remember this office, and it looked so big for us that I remember Merle and I kind of talking and contemplating we should maybe rent out the back half of that office because we just couldn't justify it all. And then Merle kind of made the step, no, we're keeping it. And I thought, wow, you're way out there. So, you know, and when I think about that, you know, Merle was straightforward and very deliberate about what he did. And one of his favorite sayings really summed him up to me, which was, never yell whoa at a horse race. You've all heard him say it. And he never whoaed at a horse race. You know? Once in this new space that seemed too big, I remember Merle looking at the fax machine again, more technology. He said, what the hell's that? And he said, this isn't good, we're going to lose the personal contact. Which is true. He really valued his relationships, and he groomed the ones that were important to him. And that did bother him because we were always on the phone, we were always talking with the customers, you always had that personal touch. Merle, again, more of his one-liners, I remember him shaking his head and saying to me, he said, you never met a person you didn't want to hire. And he's right about that. It's one of my weaknesses. When I meet somebody new, I'm sitting there listening to their story, but I'm looking for ways that they could help Valley. I got to try and not do that. So with all of that hiring, the next thing you know, we are renting office space north and south of this new place that we had because we ran out of room. And I remember Merle and his family are going to Jamestown to race. He mentions that there's this building out there, he said that's for sale, and I knew which building it was. And he said maybe we should look at that. And I'm thinking, what are we going to do with all of that? And so I actually went out and got the floor plans for this new place, only so I could show Merle he was wrong, that it's too much for us. And I started putting names down in all of the offices, and I found out we were filling up about 75% of them. So I guess he was right again. And so let's see where we at. So we made the leap. We bought the property, and all we've done is grow and expand since then. Amazing drive and tolerance for risk. I suppose that's what impressed me the most about Merle was his tolerance for risk. It rolled off of his back. He taught me a lot. Listeners, you think it was all roses, but it wasn't. We had all kinds of different downturns throughout this whole process, or setbacks, and it would seem that the deeper the setback, the better the correction. It seemed like we would diversify into something else that made us stronger. And I believe in continued sustainable growth, and I don't intend that we're going to stop that, because I think that's our best friend. Another thing I remember about Merle is that he might disagree about an idea, but you'd have to be careful what you brought to him, because he never said no. But he never mixed words. You know, he'd say, try. If you screw it up, I'll be the first to let you know. I wanted to pay tribute to a few other people here tonight. And I've been wanting to do this for a while. And I want to show you Jerry Jetvig, who was with Valley Express from the very beginning. And he's no longer with us. He hauled Roman milling and Super Value bananas to Gulfport. I'd say he really kind of helped start that backbone of what's been something we've been doing for a long time. And he really brought about respect for Valley Express that put us in a good place to continue to have trucking companies, truckers, and customers look at us. Reed Wilson in the middle, and this is one guy, he's been on my radar for a long time to talk about for a particular reason. We lost Reed to cancer at a younger age, and I know one of his dying wishes that was communicated to me from Reed is that he be remembered. And that's why I wanted to bring him up here tonight, because we're remembering him now. A couple things I'd like to say about Reed is when he went out on the road, his jeans were pressed with a crease down the front, and his boots were shined before he'd get into the truck and take off. And it just was really, what a representation of our company. Of course, I want to also bring up Merle's brother Virgil, who and his contribution to our intermodal division, and with his foresight and his ability to get that thing launched, that's what allowed us to continue to move forward and move into the worldwide and the international side of things. So we have a lot to thank him for as well. So I wanted to say that Merle taught people to test their instincts and then have the guts to do it. And again, failing just wasn't a part of who he was, and there's a lot to be learned by that. I think each one of us should maybe try and take home that lesson. What if we could all do that, and what if we were capable of seeing our own failures as just a turn in the road? I think it'd be something to inspire for. It's what he did. Yeah. So it's kind of interesting. Lori brought me a quote here as she knew I was going to visit about this, and it kind of floored me because everything I was already preparing had to do with and was around that he never feared failure. And so you bring me this quote: "Never feel failure, be terrified of regrets." And that's exactly where I was going with this. And so I send that message to all of you and all of us. Let's live by it. Now, on this last picture, maybe I'll apologize to some for it, but it had to be in here. And when we found this photo, I said, that is so Merle. Let's toast Merle. Isn't that the way he'd send us off? Let's toast Merle and the future that he helped lay out for all of us, and the future we'll carve out together. Thank you all, and Merry Christmas. Thank you.
Should we give everybody a few minutes to Test. We'll give you 5 minutes for smoke breaks. And then we've got some drawings and things, and I guess I didn't get the schedule. Are we doing heads and tails today?
Yeah. Glenn, when do you want to do that?
Glenn,
When do you want to do heads and
you brought a
tails?
pocket full of cash for heads and tails, didn't you? Oh, yeah.
Should we do gifts first and then that, or?
Okay, so go get your smoke breaks out of the way. We'll resume when we get back.